Hello everyone, welcome to another one of our how-to videos in the Foil Guys channel. Today we're going to be discussing how to sculpt step by step the fourth form of Tusk from Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Now basically, in order to do anything with aluminum foil, you need to master down three different techniques. That would be, of course, molding, making a 3D shape, pinching for noted details, and of course, combining the two in pinching them and molding them together, being able to attach without glue, to make in details without tools, and of course to make 3D steps without any other materials. And just as a quick demonstration, I'll tear off three pieces. You can follow along. These will be notably small, but you can use whatever pieces and whatever sizes you may like because foil is remarkably cheap, at least at the time of this recording. So noting these three pieces, the first thing you need to be able to do is know how to mold 3D shapes, not crushing all the way, but being able to mold in shapes so that they retain 3D. Likewise, for pinching, to be able to work in details on flat or curved surfaces, you can work on any shape that you'd like to be able to do that. You can see that on the camera there. It will be on a flat surface, but just to work in any shape. Let me know if you can see that, and if you can't, further explanations will be in the comments. But all we need to do is what you're seeing, is to be able to work in details onto flat surfaces. And then, of course, to be able to attach other pieces, tear this in half and reattach it. Well, doing the same two things that we did before, lay one on top of the other, pinch them so that there is some sort of traction, and then mold it down again. Being able to flatten the surface, you have been able to fix something that was in two separate pieces. So, with those three techniques in mind, let's work on Tusk, which in his fourth form had three basic features. Of course, his lamp skirt, his cowboy-like body, and his armored upper shell. So we'll start with the cowboy-esque body with the shape of a man. This will basically just be a stick figure. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, nothing fancy. Now notice I'm tearing out the outline of exactly what I want. Room for arms, room for legs, and room for head. The rest is the body. I'm going to reach around and mold this into a stick shape, but notice not crushing all the way, but stopping at a certain point where I believe I'll give myself the most to work with. The same for the leg and the other. And note, they don't have to be all the same length. This is just the outline. We'll be layering and wrapping on pieces and details as we continue. Same for the arms, same for the head, but leaving room for the face, just crushing the neck with these 2 fingers together. So, noting that we have a body, now let's move on to layering to give ourselves a little bit more detail so he resembles less of a stick figure here, or the fire symbol in Japanese, and more like a cowboy. So starting, of course, with the legs, we'll have his spurs and muscles. I'll tear out 2 long pieces and divide mentally where I want the upper thighs to be and the legs. And obviously the upper thighs is just going to be wrapping it around in the shape of something cylindrical. But on the other hand, the leg is going to have calves and boots, and we want to give ourselves a little bit more room to work with. So laying this on top, I'm going to hold this in place with these 4 fingers and use my free finger to wrap this around. And all the way, you'll find that if you complete the circle here, it will stick. Now, obviously, there's going to be loose pieces here and there. All you have to do is take your thumb and very slightly rub it in and pinch along the edges so that it's going to stick. And it will do just that. Same thing on the other hand. Wrap this around, stabilize with 2 fingers, move with the other, pinch towards the sides, and get yourself in the sort of shape that you want it to be, or rather get it the shape you want it to be. Now for the knees. Now fortunately this is mostly going to be covered by his lampshade, but we want to make sure that even the details that other people don't notice, we are still able to. So for a kneecap, what I'm going to do is, using my thumb as the base, I'm going to mold over. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm molding over a small section and then smoothing it out with my thumb. And then using our pinching technique, I'm going to pinch it into a circle. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of part sticking out here, so what I'm going to do is, once again, just pinch those parts in, and it will retain that shape. And then the same for the cap, just like we did before. Wrap it around into the shape of a lower leg, and then mold it in so that it looks a little bit more like a human feature and not just something that got run over. And there we have his leg. Do the same thing to the other side. Fold over a little extra piece. Pinch around on the sides of the circle. Fold back and press in anything that we don't want. Wrap this around in order to give ourselves more of a leg shape. Press down all the details that we don't like, and we have his legs. Now for the boots, obviously there was a distinction between his leg spurs and the boots underneath. With this cowboy-like feature, what we're going to do is fold under so that there will be that dividing line, and use our finger to press it into an upward U so that now it looks like he's wearing those shin guards. Same thing for this side. Press it back and use your finger to mold in an upward U. And then the rest is just basically crushing in and bringing to a point his cowboy boots and pushing it up. You can just use your pointer finger to flatten down the surface. Just careful and subtle but consistent strokes, and it will maintain its shape. Same thing for this side, just mold it into a piece that ultimately ends in a point, and you've got your cowboy boots. Little adjustments here and there, but literally all that I'm doing is using these three primary fingers and making it into the shape that I want it to look like. You guys can have photo or anime reference. Fortunately, I am familiar enough with this guy, done them before, so we can do them from memory. Now that's going to be the lower legs. If you want to add on spurs on the ends, you're welcome to, but for the sake of basics, this is all we really need to get done. Most of it will be under his skirt anyway. Now for the upper body, obviously we want to make two arms. Those will be more out to the side. So, just like we did with the legs. Make sure that the side you're going to put the fingers on gives you a little more to work with, because that will be a little bit more advanced. But just like we did with the upper legs, all you have to do is wrap this around. Pinch in the details, and now you have a bicep. We'll add on his large shoulder guards here in a moment, but we want to give himself an extra bit of width as well, because since this upper body shell below his lamp skirt, his lampshade, is going to take up a lot of space, we may want to give him a second pair of arms as well. And that's literally just wrapping around with your thumb and your forefinger. The foil will do the rest. Then, of course, for the elbows, he has some pretty gnarly looking wrist guards there. So we're going to do the same thing we did for the lower half of his ankle and mold over. But instead of pressing into an upward shape, I'm going to pinch into a downward point. You can see what I'm doing there. Pinch into a downward point. And then do the same thing on this end, but using my finger to mold in a U. Watch what I'm doing here. I'll tear away the sections so that you can see what's being done. Molding into an upward U, and then wrapping it around just as if this was the material I was working with in leather, or in his case, in metal. Moving this piece up, we now have what's going to be his hands. 4 fingers, 1 thumb. All you have to do is to get this out flat as possible. Give yourself as much to work with. Tear off a section on the side for a thumb, but don't tear it off. Just tear a section. And then do the same thing for his 4 fingers. Doesn't matter if they're in odd places, so long as you can line them up to look like your own. The anime was very gracious in that it made its characters modestly human looking. So, doing what you would do if you were sharpening a pencil with your fingers, you're just going to rub them down into a point and twist each and every one individually until you have 4 tiny little cigars, if you will. Keep the cowboy-esque reference up. And with those 4 lines, and the same thing for the thumb, you will have a hand. Now, obviously, that looks a little bit splayed out, so what we're going to do is just take our thumbs in a place where we can get the most control and press them together so that it looks like our own. One of those fingers looks a little long, so I'm going to pinch it down just a little bit more. But as you can see there, we have a 5-finger total hand, just what we were looking for. Little adjustments here and there, but of course foil is a very forgiving medium. You can continue to work on it as you see fit, so long as it looks right in the end. It doesn't matter if it looks like a mess in the process. Now again, you notice this arm is a little bit wider than what his legs would normally be, but also noting for Tusk, we're going to be compacting in a lot of foil in the end for a shell, so we're just giving ourselves a little bit to work with. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Wrap around, using my pointer fingers and thumb for stability and my middle finger for pressure. Same thing for this bicep. Wrap this section around and to a point to make the wrist guards. Then same thing for the lower boot. Now we have room for the hand. Pinch for a thumb. Pinch for his pointer finger, middle finger, index finger, and his middle finger. Twisting those into a finger-like shape, now we have our second hand. And since he has a humanoid shape, those are all the hands that are going to be required of us. See this next time for when we do Krishna or something. Or whichever one had multiple arms. Anyway, so all that completed, we now have the basic frame. Now Tusk's head, for those of you who don't want to get too much into detail, is just going to be more of an oval, but I can show you how to add little indents. You can just use a pencil for the eyes and mark in the little circle on his head as well. But with the basics cut out the way, we want to make sure that we get the more complicated done first so that we can work back, make it an easier journey downhill rather than work ourselves up into exhaustion. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do his lampshade skirt. Obviously, doing all those individual little discs is going to be exhausting, so we want to look for shortcuts. We want to make sure that we can get into a system where we can accomplish the most with the least amount of effort and time, because it ultimately just matters if it looks right in the end. So we want to do it right the first time. Give or take, we have around, say, 12 that'll be visible from the front, maybe 36 total. I'm just going to settle for 8 right now in the demonstration, and you can add on layers as you see fit if you want to give him more flow. So, tearing off a sizable piece, and at about the same length that I want the cylinders to be, we're going to be compacting this a lot, so you might want to assume for double. But just like we did for the fingers, a much larger scale, tear, but don't tear off. Stopping there. Series of very narrow strips of foil that we're going to use for his lampshade. Notice I'm just using my thumb underneath to show where the limit is and tearing with my pointer and middle finger. Brings us to 5 and now to, all right. So this is going to be his skirt. Now, what's interesting about this is it's going to basically be like making chainmail, but without the loops in it. So what we're going to do is, keeping these strips as consistent as we possibly can, I'm going to do exactly what we did with the neck. I'm going to pinch in and twist just like we did before, as small and as narrow as possible. Then I'm going to flatten out a piece with my thumb and do the same thing again. And you'll notice that as I'm twisting, it almost resolves itself. Now, obviously that's not a perfect oval. I'll just smooth it out with my thumb, but I can continue to do this on the way down in a pattern until I find one that works, where it's basically doing the work for me. And continuing all this way down, we had, if memory serves, I believe 6 or 7 of those rings, so we'll try to stay as true to the original as possible so people know that it's him. It's like a lampshade skirted cowboy that's hot pink and so forth. It'd be hard to miss, but then again, they couldn't see him in real life in the anime either. So, continuing. Not a fan of the show in case you're wondering, but still able to look at pictures. We've got the first ring, so we're just going to do that this number of times. That'll be 7 more times. And of course, just for the sake of brevity, I'll rush through these so that you guys can get the idea, but I'll be repetitive in the sense of helping you guys catch on with the pattern. Smoothing down with my thumb, pinching, smoothing down with my thumb, pinching. And notice I'm even forming a little chain, developing technique as I go as well. And that little crescent moon at the bottom there. Continuing, pinching down, press with my thumb, pinching down, press with my thumb, pinching down, press with my thumb, and continuing this pattern all the way down to the bottom until I have no more to work with, or I feel that the shape is enough to communicate exactly what I want it to look like Tusk Act 4. Continuing on and on. I'll just walk you guys through this audibly. I'm sure you guys will get the hang of it, and for those of you who perhaps are going to intend to do this later, feel free to take a few strips of foil and practice the three main techniques, the tearing, the folding, the pinching, in that order to make sure that you can get the feel for this material. Because note, while I make it look easy, it's because of a lot of practice. You guys can figure this out if you're able to perfect the technique. Because note, practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. You want to make sure you're doing it the right way. But oftentimes as well, doing things the wrong way shows you ways it doesn't work. So you try something else and continue on with it. All you have to do is find a system that works for you, get a feel for the material, make sure that when it's doing what you want it to do, that it ends up looking right in the end. As long as that's your mindset, you don't have to worry about what it looks like in the middle, because fortunately, unlike clay or paintings and so forth, foil gives you a lot of forgiveness. You can undo mistakes and repair them as you're going along. And even after you're finished, if something gets broken or messed up or it doesn't even look quite right, you can continue to work on it indefinitely. So just get into the habit of finding new ways and better ways to do the same thing and make sure that the end result is ultimately your goal. We'll continue with this, finishing up the last of his little lampshade skirt. And again, I'll say that it's interchangeably as I have to because, quite frankly, I don't think he knows either, unless he mentions it in the manga. But either way, how would I know? Finishing up this last one, obviously you guys can already tell in your heads how we're probably going to attach this around him the same way you would on any other living 3D object. Give yourselves a little bit of pinching room to straighten this out, and perhaps a little bit of flow for those of you who want him to be in that sort of aggressive posture that he's seen in most of his appearances. And then wrap this around his upper waist, almost to his chest line. Now, I'm pinching down and pressing in order to make a mold. As you can see, that's a little bit off. So I'm going to readjust, just take each piece, two in my fingers, and put them exactly where I want them to go, at what width, length, depth, and height that it needs to in order to resemble Tusk. Obviously, it's a little bit closer, not perfect, but you can add on more layers and get it to exactly what you want it to look like. So, continuing from there, now we're on to his upper body, his shoulder pads, and his face. The face, as we said, is just going to be an oval, so we'll just mold that into a very delicate line, humanoid face. And now for the body, the shoulders. And the shoulders we'll do first. Just tear off two thin sections, just as much as the arm. Cut that in half. What I want you to do is to save a small section for what we'll wrap around later to attach this. Perhaps even make it into a cloth so you can wrap it around and mold it into almost like a kind of a knot. The rest of this is going to be thick, so we're going to fold it over 2 times, pinch around until it resembles a little obtuse oval there. And then using our thumb underneath, we'll mold it into the shape that we want it to be so that it looks like a shoulder pad. Now, pushing this down and molding in the lines as well, we have the design that we want it to look like. This will just simply attach over to the space that we gave ourselves earlier. Wrap it around, pinch, press, mold, and packed it all in. And what do you know? It's stuck. Continuing on as well, the same thing. Give myself some material to work with. Fold this over to be nice and thick and armored. Pinch it around into the shape that I want it to look like. Move this down. Use my thumb on the inside to hollow it out and attach. Use the materials that you have. Wrap it around. Mold, press, pinch it in. And it will resemble what we want it to resemble, which was the goal. And the same thing for the body, except instead of just on one wraparound, I suppose, it won't be on his shoulders, it'll be around his chest and his back. So imagine in your mind, say, a bulletproof vest, but fat. That's what we're going for. So keep that in mind in the same way that we did the stick figure body. Two for under the shoulders, two for over the shoulders, and the rest, just like with the shoulder pad, hollowed out to the shape that we want. Obviously, his head's going to go right here, so like we did with the boots and like we did with the wrist guard, his finger was off there, just going to press in, stabilize with these two fingers, but press in, make room for the head, and the rest will just be moving around and trying not to interfere with the pieces that we already have. Now, a little bit of an Easter egg. This part detached, which is ideal because there's going to be mistakes as we're doing this. That's what makes foil a useful material. Tear off another material, work around the pieces that you already have assembled, and now you can reattach that, just like we're doing with the upper torso. And voila, no need for glue or grief. But continuing with the upper torso. This will be across his back. For that set of armor. And for those of you who have taken notice, perhaps not enough for the chest. Well, that's going to be easy to fix. We just take off more. Two for the top, two for the bottom. And obviously you know that there's that 5-point star marking in the middle as well. You can mark that out with a pencil afterwards if it suits your fancy, or if you want to see in the intermediate stages of things, tear in details post-work. But for the sake of basics and just demonstrating how this could be done and that it could be done, we'll adjust the head a little bit to make sure that it's more in a hunched posture like it was for him. Bend his knees a little bit so he has that bow-legged cowboy posture. Move some of the lampshade around so that you can tell that it's him. And the rest is self-explanatory. Torso's a little thin, so I'll give that a small little stretch. And all that we're doing at this point is minor adjustments until we have exactly what we're looking for. Pinching in those to make themselves a little bit more rotund. Hands out and in his posture. Moving out the pieces. You know what? Since we've taken the time, we may as well do this right. I'll tear out some more pieces for his lampshade. Four more should do it for the sake of time. That's a little shortcut there as well. Now I'm saving myself the effort. Pinch, press with your thumb, pinch, press with your thumb. A little monotonous, but also quite therapeutic if you get into the habit of it. And if not, then you can just imagine what it will be worth it when you don't have to spend all that money on anime props. You can just make your own. But nonetheless, this is only going to be as good as you allow it to be. If you keep working on it, you keep getting better at it, you can make your own sculptures and have fun with this material. I'm not an exclusivist when it comes to wanting to put out this art form. I can already recommend to you many people, many of which are far better than I am in some techniques, but nonetheless very creative with their mediums. The goal is that you're having fun with it and that you're investing it in the lives of people who could be blessed by it. And that's, of course, what I'd want for any of you guys, not just from me, but for you as well, to go and do the same. Oh, that's a little flat, isn't it? Yeah. So continuing with this point, we're almost done. This is just final finishing up touches at this point, maybe for his face a little bit more round. There we go. That looks better. Guess one way or another we were having all those lampshades, weren't we? Fold it over, pinch it in, make it as least noticeable and blend in with his armor as possible. Make sure that his legs stick out, stand out, whatever. Press his arms in, because it looks like we gave ourselves a little too much to work with there. It's bow-legged, but not that wide in the reach. And there we have it. Tusk Act 4. So, if you guys have any further questions or would like to see anything else made of the sort, whether for, from, or beyond JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I'd be happy to take them. Just make sure that they're appropriate for all ages. And also note, if you guys would like to encourage and support this channel, feel free to do so however you see fit. Thank you for the request, for the time, and look forward to making more with you in the future.